I don't remember exactly when I started falling in love with Landon. It might have been on a Tuesday night at 2:17 a.m. when the fluorescent lights in the Stillman Library flickered as if about to go out, the behavioral economics deadline weighing heavily on my chest, and Landon, with his old gray hoodie, the smell of cold coffee, and dark circles under his eyes, placed another latte in front of me, saying nothing, just lightly touching my wrist as a reminder. You're not alone.
I'm Wyatt.
A junior majoring in communications at a public university in the Midwest of the United States. My life, at least on paper, is pretty ordinary. Classes, group assignments, a part-time job at the department's recording studio, and long evenings chasing deadlines. I never thought I'd fall in love amid planners, overlapping Google Docs, and professors' emails sent at midnight. But love doesn't ask for permission. It just arrives quietly, like Landon did with me. Landon is majoring in computer science. Smart in a way that makes others both admire and annoyed. He understands algorithms like reading poetry, but he's clumsy with his own emotions. We met in an elective class on ethics in digital media. A strange choice for both of us. I sat in the back, Landon by the window. On the first day, he turned to ask to borrow a pen, then smiled apologetically because my brain runs faster than my hand. That smile wasn't the kind that draws the whole room's attention, but it made me pause, as if someone had temporarily muted the noise around us. We started talking more because of group projects, then because we both hated 8 a.m. deadlines, then because we both preferred cold pizza over hot. Little things piled up, weaving into extended study nights. Neither of us said anything outright. In college, where everyone is busy, intimacy often disguises itself as studying together. That night, the Tuesday I mentioned, we sat across from each other, two laptops wide open. Outside, snow fell thickly, silent enough to hear the heater sighing. I was stuck on the conclusion of my essay, my mind blank. Landon watched me for a long time, then pulled his chair closer. You don't have to be perfect, he said. Just honest. I gave a weak smile. I'm not sure I can be honest anymore.
I'm tired.
Landon nodded. Me too. We fell silent. But that silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was like a shared space where exhaustion was acknowledged. I realized my hand was shaking, not from the cold. Landon placed his hand on the table very close to mine. I could have pulled away. I should have pulled away. But I didn't. When his fingers brushed mine, just a fleeting touch, my whole body tensed, then relaxed. Intimacy without noise came so softly. Wyatt. Landon called my name, his voice lower. Do you ever feel like everything comes at once? Schoolwork, expectations, and, he paused. And emotions, I finished. He looked at me, eyes wide, as if I'd just voiced his greatest fear. We stared at each other long enough that I forgot about the essay. I forgot the clock. There was only Landon, and the feeling of an invisible thread pulling us closer. We didn't kiss that night.
No dramatic moment.
Just as we packed up, Landon draped his jacket over me because it's cold out there. And when we stepped into the snow, he held my hand, so naturally, as if our hands were meant to be together. After that came days of loving each other amid deadlines. Loving in the library, in 24/7 coffee shops, in my cramped dorm room, where Landon sat on the floor, back against the bed, coding while I edited audio for a project. We kissed during short breaks. Hasty kisses, but real. But loving amid deadlines comes at a price. The pressure began to wear us down in subtle ways. Landon grew quieter as final projects approached. I became irritable. We missed dates because just one more hour. Then 1 hour turned into all night. Once, I pulled an all-nighter to finish a podcast for class, while Landon disappeared for 2 days at a hackathon. When he returned, eyes red, voice hoarse, I was angry. Not because he was busy, but because I was scared that in this world full of deadlines, I was just a task to complete, not a person chosen. I hadn't said it out loud, but it was there, between us, like an unwritten line in an open document. And I knew, if we didn't learn to love each other amid these deadlines, instead of after everything was done, we'd lose each other. We had our first fight on a Sunday evening, right before midterms week. No shouting, no harsh words, just silence that stretched until it hurt. Landon sat on my bed, back against the wall, laptop on his lap. The screen reflected blue light on his face, making him look more distant than usual. I stood by the desk, trying to remix audio for my podcast project, but my ears heard nothing but Landon's steady typing.
Top. Top. Top.
Like a countdown. Can you stop for a bit? I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Landon didn't look up. Just 5 more minutes. I exhaled. You said that an hour ago. This time he looked at me, eyes tired, defensive. Wyatt, I really need to finish this part tonight. I know, I replied quickly. I'm not telling you to quit. I paused, searching for words. I just want you to be here. Landon closed his laptop, sighing. I am here, but I knew. He knew too. Being here wasn't just physical presence. Being here was looking at me like he did in the library, like when he held my hand in the snow. Right now, he was in another world, full of code, deadlines, and self-imposed pressure. Maybe I should go, Landon said, his voice small. That hit the sorest spot. I turned away, pretending to focus on the screen. If you want. He stood up, put on his jacket.
No good viekis.
Just the door closing lightly, as if it had never opened. I sat on the bed, emptiness spreading through me. I wasn't angry at Landon. I was angry at myself for not knowing how to ask without feeling selfish. In college, everyone is taught time management, but no one teaches how to manage your heart when it collides with a packed schedule. We didn't talk for 2 days. Those 2 days felt like 2 weeks. I still saw Landon on campus, in the cafeteria, in the library, but we only nodded hello. That distance made me realize how much I'd come to rely on him. Not just for love, but for breathing. On Wednesday evening, I got a message. Landon, you free? I'm on the rooftop of the engineering building. I didn't reply right away. I stared at the screen, heart racing. Then I grabbed my jacket and went out. The rooftop was empty. Wind blew strong, carrying the smell of metal and chill. Landon stood near the railing, hands in pockets, looking down at the yellow lights below. When he heard my footsteps, he turned. He looked even more tired than before. I'm sorry, Landon said immediately, as if he'd rehearsed it all day. I wasn't listening. I swallowed. Me too. We stood facing each other, far enough not to touch, but close enough to feel the warmth. Landon looked at me for a long time, then said slowly, I'm scared. Every time a deadline comes, I'm afraid if I stop, even for a bit, everything will collapse. And I'm not good at sharing that. I nodded. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need to know that when you disappear, it's not because I'm not important enough. Those words hung in the air. Landon stepped forward very slowly, as if asking permission. When he hugged me, I realized how tense I'd been. I rested my forehead on his shoulder, breathing deeply. We stood like that, amid the wind and lights, no need for more words. We made up silly but necessary rules. Text if too busy, dedicate at least 1 evening a week without talking about schoolwork, kiss before opening laptops. It sounded simple, but it helped. Love, it turns out, needs structure too, like Landon's code, like my podcast scripts. But life didn't get easier because of it. Finals week came like a storm. I got my project back from the professor with a slew of red comments. Landon hit a major bug right before the deadline. We were exhausted. And when exhausted, people say things they don't mean. The night before the final deadline, Landon slumped his head on my desk, hands shaking. If I fail this class, he said, everything I've built will crumble. I knelt in front of him, lifting his face. Look at me. You're not your grades. You're the person I love. Landon smiled weakly. Amid hundreds of deadlines? Especially amid them, I replied. And in that moment, I knew we weren't just surviving college. We were learning to choose each other over and over, even when most tired. Finals week passed like a hailstorm, noisy, relentless, and leaving invisible bruises. I lived on watered-down coffee and hasty meals. Landon practically slept at his screen. We met every day, but mostly to remind each other to drink water, eat something, or just touch hands as a silent promise. I'm still here. On the last night before my biggest project deadline, the dorm room was bathed in weary yellow light. I sat on the floor, headphones on, editing the final segment of my podcast. It was a story about our generation's pressures. Young people taught to run fast, but no one shows how to stop. I realized I was telling our story. Ours. Landon lay on the bed, eyes closed but not asleep. Do you ever think, he said voice hoarse, that without college, we'd love each other easier? I took off my headphones, looking up at him. Maybe, but without college, I wouldn't have met you. Landon opened his eyes, looking at me, a very faint smile. Fair. We didn't make love that night, just lay next to each other, wrapped in blankets, listening to the wind outside the window. Intimacy sometimes doesn't need skin on skin. Just knowing the other is breathing steadily beside you. When everything was finally submitted, a strange emptiness appeared.
No immediate deadlines.
No reason to stay up until 3 a.m. And in that emptiness, questions began to surface. I got a summer internship offer, Landon said one Friday afternoon, as we sat on the steps in front of the library building. In California. I tried to keep my face neutral. That's far. Yeah. He looked down at his hands. 3 months. 3 months. It didn't sound long, but in my mind, it was a hazy distance. We just learned to love amid deadlines. What about loving without a shared schedule? I could stay for summer research, I said. Here. We looked at each other. No drama. Just reality. College isn't just schoolwork. It's small, quiet forks in the road, decisive. That evening, we sat on the bed, lights off, only streetlight filtering in. Landon held my hand. I don't want to lose you, he said, but I don't want you to sacrifice everything for me. I squeezed his hand. I don't want to become an item on your to-do list. Landon smiled sadly. You never were. We talked for a long time, about fears, about expectations, about loving someone when the future is unclear. No perfect answers, just honesty, the thing that drew us together from the start. We decided to try. No grand promises, just try loving across time zones, short calls, days so busy we only send an emoji. Loving in the most mature way we knew. The day Landon left, I saw him off at the city's small airport. No family, just me. We stood at security, suitcase between our feet. Landon hugged me tight. Amid so many more deadlines, he whispered, I'll still choose you. I kissed him, unhurried. Me too. When Landon disappeared into the crowd, I stood there for a long time. I didn't cry. I breathed deeply, as I'd learned to do when loving someone in a world that never stops pushing. The weeks after, we loved through screens. Morning texts, late-night calls, silences from exhaustion, and returns with apologies. I realized love isn't when everything is easy. Love is choosing each other even when schedules don't allow. One night, after finishing another essay, I reopened my podcast file. I added a final segment, not in the submitted version. We loved each other amid deadlines, and maybe that's how we learned to love truly. I sent the audio to Landon. He called back immediately. I listened, Landon said, voice choked. Thank you. I smiled, looking out the window where campus lights still shone. College continued. Deadlines would come. But amid all that, I'd found someone to go through it with. And that, for me, was a victory. The new semester started in a limbo feeling. No more Landon sitting across from me in the library. No more gray hoodie draped over the chair in my dorm. Everything familiar but missing a beat. I realized I measure time not by deadlines anymore, but by the gaps between our calls. California and the Midwest are 2 hours apart. Landon often called when I was leaving my last class, while he was heading back to his internship dorm. Sky behind him flooded with orange sun. I both loved and hated it. Hated because it reminded me we were in different rhythms. Loved because despite the different rhythms, we still found ways to touch. You look thinner, Landon said in a FaceTime call, frowning. I've been eating fine. I smiled, though I knew it was a lie. Wyatt. I'm really okay. He didn't say more, just looked at me for a long time. Some things don't need arguing, just need to be seen. The pressure this semester wasn't lighter. I took on more work at the studio to cover tuition. My evenings stretched longer, and sometimes, when Landon called, I was too tired to want anything but silence. Once I didn't pick up, then again. By the third time, Landon texted. Did I do something wrong? That message twisted my chest. We fought again. Through screens. Through lines of text lacking tone. I said he didn't understand how busy I was. Landon said I was pushing him away. Neither was completely wrong. And that's what hurt most. That night, I sat alone in the dark studio, only the desk lamp illuminating the control panel. I thought about the snowy night in the library, about the first handhold. I wondered if our love could survive without shared space, shared schedules. I called Landon. Sorry, I said before he could speak. I'm not good at loving from afar. Landon exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath. Me neither. But I want to learn. We set new things. No calls when too tired. Say straight when needing space. And most importantly, don't turn silence into punishment. Long-distance love isn't romantic like movies. It's like a tough group project, demanding constant communication and patience. At the end of October, my school had homecoming. Campus blazed with colored flags, music echoing across the square. I went alone amid couples holding hands. There were moments I felt so out of place I wanted to leave. But then my phone buzzed. Landon looked toward the stage. I turned. On the big screen behind the band, a short video played. A demo app from Landon's internship team. In the corner of the video, a small line, almost unnoticed, for Wyatt. I stood frozen. Amid hundreds of people, amid cheers, I felt chosen. Not loudly public, just enough for me to know. That night, we video called for a long time. I told him about standing in the crowd with my heart trembling. Landon smiled, eyes bright. I want you there, he said. But until then, I'll find ways to show up differently. Time passed slowly yet quickly. Amid schoolwork, jobs, and short calls, we gradually found our own rhythm. Not perfect, but real. At the end of the semester, I got an email saying my podcast was selected for the school radio. I called Landon immediately. He shouted with joy, making his roommate hush him. I'm proud of you, Landon said. Not for the achievement, but because you didn't give up. I smiled, eyes stinging. You too. I began to understand. Loving each other isn't just overcoming deadlines together. It's becoming a refuge for each other when deadlines pass and emptiness appears. And I knew our story wasn't over. It was just moving to another chapter, harder, farther, but more mature. Winter came earlier than I thought. Campus covered in a thin layer of snow, everything becoming quiet in a very American way. Flags hanging still before dorms, bare trees, students hurrying with hot coffee in hand. I navigated this semester like walking a tightrope, trying to balance school, work, and missing Landon. We didn't call every day anymore. Not because we loved less, but because we'd learned not to cling. Some days just a text. You okay today? Some days complete silence. At first, that silence panicked me. Then I learned to trust. Trust that love doesn't vanish just because it's not named. The night before winter break, I sat in my dorm, packing. I found Landon's gray hoodie, forgotten from last semester. I held it to my nose, the familiar laundry scent stabbing my chest. Without thinking long, I put it on, zipping it to my chin. Felt like a hug. My phone buzzed. Landon, I have news. I got an offer to return for internship. But at the branch near your school. I read the message over and over, heart pounding so hard my hands shook. Wyatt. When? Landon. Next semester. If you still want me close. I didn't reply right away. Not from hesitation, but because I needed to breathe. Then I texted, I want. We called that night. Neither said much. Just smiled. Like two people who'd run a long race and finally saw the finish sign, though knowing the road ahead still stretched. When Landon returned, the The snow had mostly melted. I picked him up at the Federal bus station, where diesel mixed with pretzel smells. We stood facing each other, a bit awkward, like meeting changed but familiar versions of ourselves. Then Landon hugged me, tight. "Hi," he said.
I raplia, buisa shuka.
We didn't rush into each other like in movies. We walked back to campus, shoulders brushing, telling each other missed little things. A tough professor, a new coffee shop, a sleepless night from missing. Loving each other again, this time was different. We didn't try to fill every gap. We gave each other space. Landon had a new project. I had a weekly radio show. We dated like adults, dinner, movies, then back to our rooms when needing quiet. But there were still nights when deadlines came. We sat in Stillman Library again at the old table. I looked at Landon, lights reflecting in his eyes, and realized the circle had closed. "Do you remember our first night here?" I asked. Landon smiled. "Yeah, you looked like you were about to drop out." "I still do." He held my hand under the table. "But now you're not alone." I thought about everything we'd been through. Silent fights, choked calls, choosing each other despite exhaustion. I thought about loving in a world that always demands more than we have. If anyone asked me what love is, I wouldn't talk about fireworks or big promises. I talk about someone bringing you coffee at 2 a.m., about someone understanding when you need silence, about choosing each other time after time amid deadlines. I opened my laptop, starting to type the first lines of a new story. Landon leaned over to look. "What are you writing?" he asked. "Us," I said, "amid the deadlines." Landon smiled, kissing my temple lightly. Outside, campus lights still shone. Deadlines would come. But this time, I knew one thing for sure. We loved each other, and we'd learned how to stay.